Out of all the self-improvement methods that I've ever done in my life, I think the most beneficial one to me was just keeping it simple. I know it sounds like such a cliche thing to say, like, oh, obviously, I want to keep it simple, but when it comes to success, most people think that it needs to be drastic. And, in order to change, people think they need to do all these unnecessary things and take all these unnecessary actions. I used to think success looked like waking up really early in the morning, just outworking people around me and just being better than everybody else. I used to think that was what success looked like for me. But as I grew older, I kind of realized that, despite improving, despite taking all these drastic measures, despite having a unregulated routine compared to normal people, I still felt like I was missing something. I was behind. And I didn't know what it was. And I knew that my routine wasn't the problem. But then I thought to myself, it's why? I kind of asked myself the question of, like, why am I doing all these things in the first place? Like, why am I waking up so early? Why am I trying to train so hard every day? And I didn't have an answer. The only real logical answer I could come up with was that other people told me that was how I would achieve success. I was on Instagram and social media a lot, and I saw these motivational videos where it kind of emphasized how you should wake up earlier than other people. You should um, work harder than other people, do more. But in reality, I followed them only because it ignited a flame in me. But, I learned very quickly that the flame was put out just as fast as it ignited. And, short-term motivation, it feels good, obviously, in the moment. But when you're left in the midst of what you started and you know you can't finish it, you kind of realize, oh, maybe I never even wanted to do all this in the first place. What I'm trying to get at is I, for so long, thought self improvement was drastic, when in reality, self improvement is simply just being consistent in the simple things. And I don't mean consistency in the sense of you have to do it 100%. I mean consistency in the sense of, can you show up more days than you don't? Can you do more good than bad? Can you minimize your bad habits and replace them with better ones? Not cut them out completely, because I feel like the thing that neglected change in my life for a very long time was the fact that, change is small, small jumps over time. I thought that my mind would be able to handle cutting out things I've done for years. And, obviously, when I tried to cut out, let's say, phone addiction in my life, it didn't work because I was addicted to it for many, many years. It's like a drug addict trying to quit. You ever make fun of your friends for like nicotine use or anything? You ever have that friends that are like, oh, I'm gonna quit next week, but then you see them, hitting it, and you're like, oh, yeah, man. Have you ever experienced that? It's kind of like the same thing. Like, we think that we just have so much like mental power to quit something when it's already taking control of our brain. So, instead of trying to go cold turkey and making all these drastic changes in my life, instead I just microdosed it, and I said to myself, I'm still gonna do it, but I'm just not gonna do it as much. I asked myself, how can I limit my usage of my phone each week? Maybe 5 minutes less, 10 minutes less, because the time passes eventually. And, I may as well make an effort to make a small change rather than a big one, because I'm much more likely to do that. For so long in my life, I feel like I aimed to be 100%. And I always felt like I was never enough because I was going for a goal that was impossible. You know, it's impossible to be 100% every single day. It's just unrealistic as well. You know, when you have that expectation of yourself to just be 100% all the time, it puts unnecessary pressure on you. You know, whenever we live, we want to live freely. But when we feel like we're expected to live a certain way or do certain things so we don't upset ourselves or other people, it just puts unnecessary pressure and confusion in our lives. Basically, what I'm getting at is that if you are somebody who wants to improve and if you are very unhappy with your life, I would highly suggest that you don't try and turn it around in a very short time frame. I would suggest that you give yourself enough time to where you can see subtle changes through weeks and months of development. But at the end of the day, another thing people neglect when changing is that your purpose has to be stronger than just wanting the result. Because I've felt this before as well, is I was so motivated by the result that when it didn't come, I just didn't want to continue what I was doing. You know, I really strongly do believe in the saying, you have to fall in love with the process, and it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Those two sayings I resonate with highly now because for so long in my life, I never questioned how I looked at anything in my life. You know, I thought I did something because I loved it. But then as I started to question why I did certain things, I started to realize maybe I don't love it as much for the thing itself. Maybe I just love it for its benefits, for its external, factors. And I realized in that moment that my priorities had to change if I wanted to be more consistent. You know, all these results, and whenever you see growth in your life, it's very nice. But at the end of the day, what really, really helps me show up consistently and has helped me show up consistently for myself, for my health, for my mind, all of those things, what's helped me is just thinking about how much joy I still had, you know, first starting. I'm saying if I had that much joy without experiencing all of these factors like development, like positive changes, despite seeing all those things, it doesn't mean anything because I know that I didn't start this habit, I didn't start this hobby because of those external factors. You know, I just started it because I loved it. So, can I keep challenging my love to be stronger for it, to be consistent, and not be blinded by temporary ups or downs? You know, even if something's going bad in my life or something's going bad, let's say I'm a basketball player, hypothetically, and, I'm not shooting well from the three. Despite not shooting well from the three, I'm going to come from a place of gratitude and say, at least I still get to play basketball. You know, when you come from places of gratitude and you come from places that don't require any external gain, I feel like that's when growth really starts to accelerate in your life. And not only does it accelerate, but it stays with you because you can grow and you can benefit from something, but it's not always guaranteed to stay with you. You know, you could be on top of the world and the next week you're back at rock bottom. What I'm basically trying to say is keep it simple with your life always. And just make sure you come from a place of love and gratitude whenever you do anything regarding your hobbies, regarding what you want to do with your future.